we have something different today, tackling the mind, something we've tagged minding your mind. And you know what? As a lot of us as believers, we like to take care of our body. Every one of us like to look good, don't we? We love to look good because we want to step out and, feel good about ourselves. We love to look good. We take care of our physical appearance, our physical body. We take care of our spiritual because, as children of God, that's one of the things we do. We take care of the spiritual. But guess what? There is also an aspect, the mind, which is the mental aspect of things, that we don't tackle as enough as we ought to. I love the Bible because the Bible is complete. Does anyone agree with me, by the way? The Bible is complete. And why do I say that? When you go to 3 John, it's just the one chapter. But verse 2, if you can project it so that we can all read together, if it's possible. I don't know, my guru on media. It tells us, it says, it tells us, that's it. It says, beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things. I love this verse because it says you should prosper. If I ask how many of us want to be, prosperous, how many of us want to be billionaires, we would all scream and shout. The Bible tells us to be prosperous, in all things, not just financially, not just, spiritually. It says in all things and be in health. So when it says in all things, that's, physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, God wants us to prosper and be in health. It says just as your soul prospers. So that's one of the things our Bible tells us. So dear believers, God is interested in every aspect of our lives. And we should be mindful of our minds as well. It does not make us less of a Christian. If anything, it makes us more of a Christian because we are following the scripture. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. A few years ago, I was studying, and I came across this neurologist. I can't even speak anymore. Someone help me out here. I came across this neurologist called Sigmund Freud, who talks about, please research it. He talks about the iceberg, theory, how a lot of us, the things, the way we are, the things we portray, is divided into different segments, and it says that we sometimes tackle the things that we can see, which is body language, what we say, behavior and things like that. But there is a bigger driving force underneath which cannot be seen, and that's where the mind comes in. Even the Bible, linking it with the Bible, it says that we should guard our heart with all diligence, guard our mind with all diligence. But you know what? Today you're not here to hear me talk, so I'm going to leave it up to the professionals. Because we've got the professionals in the building. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Yes, I hope, those people online as well, they're excited because the people in here are excited as well. I'm excited as well. I'm so excited because I know, we're going to learn so much. So without further ado, I will, I believe we need a seat. Just one seat, Without further ado, I am going to introduce the Director of Mental Health in Leicester by the name of Gordon King. So please just, welcome him, make him feel welcome. Microphone, please. Sanitize. Oh, thank you. God bless you. You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Gordon King, Director of Mental Health for Leicestershire and Rutland. So thank you. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you for inviting us to the church. Thank you for inviting us to this space and for being able to spend some time with you. It's a real privilege and a real honour. I've got some colleagues with me. I've got Romeo and I've got Helen from the CCG. Romeo's from Leicester Partnership Trust, where I work, and Helen and Sue are both from the CCG, which is the Clinical Commissioning Group, who are kind of in charge of all the health services in the system. And between us, we're just going to spend a few minutes going through some slides and talking to you about an opportunity. We have some new investment coming and an opportunity to just tell you about a consultation that we have going at the moment. around how we can improve mental health services across the system. When I say the system, I mean Leicester, Leicestershire, Rutland. So there's quite a bit to get through, but I'll try and be succinct as I can. We have some slides. I'll try to not to spend too much time on these slides. And it's very nice to be edition 1, Pastor Mercy. I think that sounds good to me. And this is a really good thing for us as well, because we've done many of these events over the past few months, and this is the first face-to-face event we've done. This is the first one we haven't done on Teams. So it's, again, a great joy and a privilege for us to be in this space, for us to do that. So we're going to talk about the consultation. We're going to talk about the opportunity for people to have their say about how we can improve the services across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. And we've tried to meet as many groups as we can. We've tried to meet many groups of members of the public. We've met lots of charities. We have been trying to involve ourselves with as wide a diverse group of people as we can across the system. And I have a particular interest in working around Black mental health and Asian mental health, because that's a research and clinical area that I've been interested in for some time. So we've got a few slides to go through, and then we'll talk about the consultation. But I think, do we have the video first? No, we'll come to the video later. So I'll have a few slides and then we'll come to the video. So the first slide, Angela, if you can put that up for us. Yeah, thank you. So, as John says, and as Pastor Mercy says, really, in many ways mental health is like physical health. Everybody has it. Everybody has mental and physical health. We need to take care of it. It's incredibly important to us, as Pastor Mercy pointed out. A good mental health means being able to think, feel and react in your life in the ways that you need and want to live your life. And that's incredibly important. But if you go through a period of poor mental health, you might find the ways that you're thinking, the ways that you're feeling, or the ways that you're reacting become really challenging, really difficult. Or even sometimes seemingly impossible to cope with. And that's the work that we have to be in and work in and spend some time in today and think about how we can talk about that today and how we can improve it. And this can feel just as bad as a physical illness, and in many ways even worse for people who suffer really poor mental health and mental illness. Have the next slide, please, Andrew. So, again, a little bit more about what are mental health problems. Well, mental health problems affect around a quarter of people in any 1 year, across a lifetime as well. They range from very common problems, such as depression and anxiety, to actually quite rare problems, but very significant ones. And people have heard of illnesses such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. So there's quite a range of things when we talk about mental health, and it affects a range of people. But I think the point I'm making is it affects many, many people. I mean, 1 in 4 of us, now there's plenty of us in this room today, and 1 in 4 of us over a lifetime, over a year, will probably experience some mental health difficulties. So there's mental health problems or mental illness. We can have the next slide, please, Andrew. So there's some common examples here on this slide of what we call mild to moderate. Now, by mild, I don't mean it's not important. I don't mean that it's something that isn't problematic, because mild and moderate mental health can actually be really, really significant and really impact on our ability to prosper, to quote John. But here's a list of some of those, and many of us in this room may have felt some of this for a period of time, or even longer periods of time. Anxiety, stress, excessive worry, excessive focus on specific things, to the exclusion of other things, sometimes panic attacks, depression. OCD, I don't like acronyms very much, so I'll explain this one. That's obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a very specific disorder. And then there's a range of other things on this slide around going through difficult periods of transition, and PTSD and phobias and various things. So there's quite a range of things here when we talk about mild to moderate. And that's important for us to hold in our mind as we think about the consultation, because that's an area of mental health that affects a great many people, and we need to think about how we can improve people's access to those services. Next slide, please, Andrew. So this is a good slide, isn't it? Am I the only one that feels this way? Well, most people know someone who's experienced a mental health problem. And it can happen to anybody from all kinds of walks of life. It's likely that when you find a combination of self-care, treatment and support that works for you, then you can get better. So there's something really important here to say about mental health, and that's about the concept of recovery. Now, recovery from mental health is absolutely core to how we think about things. And it's important because there's something important in the notion of recovery that talks to a notion of hope, and a notion of opportunity, and a notion of control, and an opportunity for us to work with our friends and our colleagues and other professionals, and with ourselves to improve and to get into a position of recovery. So there's something about not being alone and also understanding that there is hope. Can I have the next slide, please, Angela? This is a slide that I won't go through. This is a slide from the Mental Health First Aid organisation, which is a very, very good organisation. And there's just some symptoms of, some signs and symptoms of depression, which people could have a look. And I suspect people can get these slides after this presentation, actually. But people will see on here around sleeping difficulties, tiredness, difficult concentration, all the way to very severe symptoms about wishing to harm yourself. And depression is a very significant and very important illness and mental health condition that we need to be aware of. For people who are interested, the Mental Health First Aid Foundation is really worth looking at. They have some fantastic, really important resources on their website, and it's a fantastic piece of training, and I'm sure that we'd be happy to talk to anybody if they're interested in that. Over the next slide, please, Angela. Again, a little bit more about what it is. Many types of mental illness, depending on how it's described. As I say, many people can be experienced to consider have this at some time. Like many other illnesses, it's common, can occur any time of our life, actually. Mental illness can occur in early life, all the way through to in older age. Severe mental illness is a term used for what we describe as very long-standing conditions. And that affects only very small numbers of the population, thankfully, but it is very, very significant and concerning when it does occur. Around 1% of the population can be said to have experienced a serious mental illness at some point in their lives. And that's, by the way, pretty much standard internationally. So that's not just for this country. Pretty much every country has similar statistics. So, next slide, please, Angel. So, there's a little bit of a preamble there on mental health, just to make sure that we're all understanding what we're talking about. So let's talk about the proposals in the consultation. Now, there are two main things that we want to improve in the consultation. And one is in this slide, which is around how people get access when they need urgent care, crisis care. And the other aspect of it is how we can arrange our planned care services, our longer-term services, to support people better. So this slide talks about our urgent and access and crisis care. So in other words, if you need to get mental health help, where do you go? How difficult it is it for you to get that help? How many different phone numbers do you need to call? Doors do you need to knock? Conversations do you need to have before you can actually have the right conversation to support you? These things are incredibly important. And that's what this consultation talks to and how we can improve that. And that's the kind of input that we'd like from people. It'd be really good to get your views on this on the consultation. And later we'll tell you how you can do that. So, first of all, there's something around, and again it was mentioned earlier, around how we can look after ourselves. And Pastor Mercy talked of how we think about our own health and our well-being and our physical bodies. Building self-help, guidance and support, and a lot of this is about how we build our online resources for people across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. How do we actually make that better for people so they can easily find out what's available, not get too confused and understand how to make the right moves and get the right support. Next to that, we've actually introduced what we call the central access point. Up until last year, and Romeo will bear this out. If you wanted mental health support, there were probably, I don't know, 6, 7 different ways, different numbers. You had to go to your GP if you're in a crisis, which is fine if your GP is available, and fine if you have a GP. Many people don't have GPs. Many young people don't have GPs. It's not always easy. Many people who are visiting don't have GPs. So it's not always easy, so we've done some work on that. So now we have one single number across Leicestershire and Rutland that people can call for advice and support and to get even crisis care, urgent crisis care, even when they're experiencing an acute mental health illness, which we think is really important. And the consultation asks for people's thoughts on us keeping that and developing that. We also want to improve and strengthen crisis cafes. Crisis cafes are incredibly important. We have 3 in the system. We want to get to 24, 25 across the whole of the system. So they're actually cafes where people can go in and get some support and advice, have a cup of tea, but also talk about their mental health with healthcare professionals, including LPT staff. And from there, if you need support, you can be referred from the cafe rather than have to, again, go back to your GP or find another route, etc., etc. So it's about improving that. Also improving the overall crisis service, which I won't talk about too much now, but there's different aspects of that we want to make work better. The triage car is about nurses that go out with the police and make sure that if people are in difficulty with the police and have a mental illness or mental distress, that we can support them with a mental health issue there and then, rather than deal with them just as a kind of criminal justice problem or a social problem. Because we know that many people who come to the tracks of the police are actually in distress, actually. We also want to introduce or continue to develop what we call a mental health care hub, which is where professionals are able to assess people at the Bradgate, rather than people necessarily having to go to A&E, which can be very busy, in particular at times of COVID. We want to reduce the number of people that go there. And we also want to improve that service as well. And also what we really want to do is to make sure that we make a much better effort for vulnerable groups, but also for groups that historically haven't accessed mental health services in the way we'd like, either because of stigma, either because of concern, either because they haven't had the opportunity to access the services for various other reasons. Can I have the next slide, please, Angel? Thank you. So that was the urgent care piece. This is a little bit around the community services and how we want to improve those. So what we really want to do is develop these new teams, these new community treatment recovery teams. And the idea is that we want to reduce our waiting times because we've got really long waiting times in this system. We want to improve the services for support for people with personality disorders and other psychological distress. It's really distressing not to be able to access those services in a way, in a timely way, and some of the waiting times are unacceptable. So we want to change that, change the way we deliver those services. We also want to generally improve services for older people as well, including making sure that we make that work better with our what we call working age, which is kind of adult. We're also expanding the perinatal services. That's for services for women before and immediately after birth. We've got some resources coming through and some investment for that. We're also developing a new maternal outreach service, which is really exciting, and that's also in the consultation. And then there's a few other pieces there about how we can support people when they're recovering from psychotic episodes, which is very serious mental illness. So there's quite a lot in there, but it's partly about the community and planned care, and partly about our crisis services. Can I have the next slide, please, Angel? There's some information in here that will make sure people have got around support for mental health and well-being, and some various slides that we'll come to at the end. But I think we probably might be ready to go to the video or some further slides first. So, do you want to go to the videos now and the case studies? Yeah. So we're just going to show a video and a couple of case studies, which should take a few moments of your time. So hopefully that was helpful in terms of explaining. This consultation is out now. It's been out for a while. It's going to close in August, so people have got plenty of time to go on, and we'll make sure that people have got the information for the website to access that. But I'm grateful for the opportunity just to talk with you for a bit. We're going to show you some videos, talk to 2 more slides, and then we'll be here to take some questions and any comments that you might have. And hopefully Romeo and soon Helen will be able to help me answer some of those. So we'll move on to the videos now, I think. Thank you, Angel.
Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. We need your help to do it right. Ella is 23, lives by herself in Loughborough, and has been previously diagnosed with an emotionally unstable personality disorder. One morning, Ella experiences strong suicidal thoughts, so she rings 999. Under the current system, Ella is taken by paramedics to the emergency department. She waits for over 3 hours. Ella becomes highly distressed and anxious and refuses help. She attempts to leave the hospital and has to be detained under the Mental Health Act and is admitted to a ward. She is an inpatient for 21 days, during which she discloses her partner has been abusive. Ella is helped by the NHS and action is taken against her partner. Under the proposed system, paramedics take Ella to the mental health urgent care hub, where she is assessed straight away and she opens up about her partner. She is then referred to the domestic and sexual violence service, where she is given support and the abuse reported to the police. Ella is then referred to the crisis team to support her for a period of time and put the necessary care in place to help Ella recover. Be part of the change to mental health services in Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. Tell us what you think by participating in a consultation. We want to improve current mental health services across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. We need your help doing that. Rose is studying at university. Like a lot of students, she's living away from home, no longer with friends or family. She's been self-harming, drinking excessively, and gone antidepressants. Her flatmates are really worried. They ring NHS 111. Under the current system, NHS 111 arranged for Rose to visit the emergency department in Leicester. Decided that she doesn't need care. Staff suggested she go to her GP to have her medication reviewed, give information and helpline numbers and send home. Rose's situation doesn't greatly change, and she doesn't feel very well supported. Under the proposed system, the NHS 111 call is transferred to the central access point. Rose is reviewed straight away. Staff talk to her about the support that she needs to help her with her problems. A face-to-face appointment is arranged the same day at a local crisis cafe, where she receives further support and feels relaxed. Rose is told to contact the central access point at any time in the future if she needs further help. Be part of the change to mental health services in Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. Tell us what you think by participating in a consultation. We want to improve the current mental health services across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland, and we need your help to do it right. Robert is 49 and has lived on his own in a flat for 15 years. When he was 21, he was diagnosed with psychosis. He gets mental health support twice a week, but has recently begun to struggle with daily activities, and issues paying his rent have all contributed to a decline in his mental health. Under the current system, Robert is checked into the acute ward and has his medication reviewed and receives occupational therapy. He is referred to the inpatient rehabilitation service and is later admitted to a mental health rehabilitation ward. Robert receives the help he needs, but spends a lot of time in a hospital environment and wants to return home as soon as possible. He is discharged after 10 months with a package of care. Under the proposed system, Robert is once again checked into the acute ward and receives occupational therapy. The Enhanced Recovery Team works with Robert and from the start, they help him to achieve his goal of getting home quickly. They arrange rehabilitation and feel that Robert can be cared for outside of a hospital in his own home. He is discharged after 9 weeks with a care package. The team help Robert develop skills to cope at home and liaise with social care who help him manage his rent, reducing his anxiety. They also support him to develop his interests and connect with people in his local community so that he can live the best life possible. Be part of the change to mental health services in Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland, and tell us what you think by participating in a consultation.
So I'm just conscious that we've given you a lot of information this afternoon. So we just wanted to show you those 3 videos because they're based on real life stories of people who've gone through mental health services and the problems that they have incurred and how we want to improve that with the changes that we're looking to put in. So hopefully that's brought it alive to you a little. But what we'd really like to do now is just to hear from you. You might have a range of questions based on what you've heard this afternoon, so please feel free to ask any of us to clarify or just further information. But we also want to hear from you in terms of what matters most to you, and whatever you tell us this afternoon is the right thing to tell us because it's coming from you and that's what means most to you. We will be just taking some notes because what we want to do is the best way to design services is to talk to people who might be using them now or might be using them in the future because that makes those services better and it designs them in a much better way. So we'll be capturing some of the things that you're telling us this afternoon because we want to make sure that that goes into the overall consultation and feedback. And then whatever we do next will be based on what we know matters most to people. So I'll open it up if I may. Are there any questions, anything that you want to find out a little bit more about based on what matters to you? Or have you got something to tell us in terms of what your thoughts are around those changes? Just pause a few moments. Yes, here.
On YouTube, so we've got the Menti link as well. It's already on the YouTube, and okay, it's up there right now as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's so lovely to see you all. Welcome, Gordon, Helen, Romeo, and Sue. I think we've been communicating for several months via email, so it feels like a deja vu moment to meet in person. First of all, I would like to applaud the event and express my thanks to Pastor Mercy and her team for pulling out a really, really strong event today. So I have a few comments and questions. And Gordon, to go to the presentation that you gave. I think one of the big challenges we have as a community, and this is speaking directly now from a Black African perspective, is a huge gap in access to information. So you talked about the Crisis Cafe, and I think I know about it because I wear several hats in the community and regionally, so it makes it easy for me to pick up such things. But I know if we did a poll, I'm so sure that nobody here would have heard of the Crisis Cafe. And as somebody who has supported several people who've gone through mental health crisis, it's been an absolute nightmare. I know that Pastor Mercy did share during one of our meetings, the real torturous experience she had trying to, support one of her own. So I think we need to address the challenge of information. It's okay to say we just print leaflets and say, if you need it, we'll send it to you. But if you take a look around the room, and I'm sure for many people online, social media is like an asset, a second part of everybody's lives. So it will be great to actually have filters or hubs where we can access this information and access it quickly. Another point I want to pick up on from your presentation. You talked about training. And I know from our conversation, Pastor Mercy and I, when we spoke to both Helen and Joe, that we were very interested in how we could enable the training and capacity building within our youth community around the issue of mental health awareness. So developing what I like to call mental health champions. Because it's easier to disclose to somebody who is in the same age bracket, same social network and social circle as you, than, for instance, to come to, a much older person. Now, of all of us here, I think one person who is most privileged is Pastor Mercy. But by the time it even gets to her, sometimes it's at a crisis point. And the job becomes much more difficult for her to do. So how can we, as a community, access that offer which, you put on the table to be able to put forward some of our youth in the church and in the community for that training? But also coming to some more cultural aspects of the design and scoping of the service. Am I echoing? Sorry. We are often forgetful of the real impact culturally that mental health has on the individual. It's not just that I disclose I have mental health issues. It is that my disclosure taints everything around me, including friends and family. So that is one of the reasons why it is very difficult to get people from certain cultural or ethnic groups to actually disclose when they're going through mental health. And this is coming from me now. I speak now as a member of the community, not as an advocate or, many other hats that I wear. So it will be, I think it will be very beneficial for the design and scoping of the service to actually take into account that there are cultural issues that prevent people from addressing or accessing or even acknowledging that those problems exist. And so how do we circumnavigate that? It's by ensuring that somewhere in the service there is somebody that looks like me. I'm not going to be talking to you, Gordon, all the time, because I could say things that are culturally relevant to me, but mean absolutely nothing to you. So you do one of two things. You either do not record it, or you record it, but you record within your own contextualization of it. And so it takes on a whole new meaning to whoever is taking the case on. So my plea is that in taking this consultation forward, there is more that will be taken on board, not just the generic access to service, but how do we make these services actually become culturally relevant, culturally sensitive, and culturally appropriate? So I'll get off my soapbox because I'm sure somebody else wants to say something. Thank you.
Do you want to, it's like a period address those. Romeo will say a few things about this as well. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. No, I mean, he knows I was going to do that. He's fully aware I was going to do that. You're absolutely right. Now, it wasn't foregrounded in those slides. But the issue of ensuring that mental health services genuinely meet the needs of the whole population, and specifically focused on areas where, as I said quickly in my presentation, groups that haven't had access to services, historically haven't accessed services in a timely way, or for other reasons, whether it's to do with stigma, as you mentioned, or other issues, are underrepresented in services. And that's something that I think morally and legally, from a CCG perspective, because there's a legal requirement to make sure that you do that is absolutely imperative. And one of the opportunities to talk to people from the widest range of different groups in Leicestershire and Rutland is precisely because of that. That's our commitment to say, help us, work with us to make sure that we shape culturally competent, culturally sensitive services, and make sure that you challenge us around what our workforce is like. Picking up your point on workforce, which I think is entirely right. But it's further than that. I mean, I would go further, and Romeo probably knows what I'm going to say. And that's, we also have to have a really honest conversation, which I think we are in mental health services, about the determinants of poor mental health and the social factors, including financial factors, housing factors, and what I have unashamedly no issue describing as institutional systemic racism. I'll be really clear about that, and the impact it has on mental health, poor mental health, and mental illness. Don't take my word for it. I'm not here trying to, in a sense, be trendy by saying that or score some points on saying that. Look at the research. The research is really clear. People know from their own lives, but also do the research. It's really clear. The research is really clear about what we grandly call interdependencies that affect the wider determinants of ill health. Racism's a really clear one, okay? So there's something about us having an open and honest conversation about that as a society and how we make sure that we work really hard on that. There's also something about LPT as an organisation and the CCGs thinking about taking up your challenge. How do we anchor ourselves properly in the community? How do we really put roots down in the community so that we're genuinely part of the community, challenged by the community and embedded in the community? And conversations like this, I think, are a huge part of that journey and a huge part of that conversation. I think you'll find that the CCG and LPT are up for that. I think you'll find that we welcome that. And I know that clinicians welcome that. But I also think that this consultation gives us an opportunity to make that voice really strong. So this will be captured today and fed through the consultation. And the opportunities, and I think the things that you've mentioned around how do you really grow champions in the community, whether it's to tackle stigma, whether it's to make sure that people are aware, as you say, how do we build our Facebook, how do we make sure that we're reaching out to faith and church groups, as well as traditional groups that people have always gone to. We've gone way, way, way beyond a few leaflets hidden at the bottom of the doctor's surgery, under the magazines and under the, like a dentist waiting room. Gone way beyond that. But I don't think we've gone far enough. I don't think we've got good at it, actually. I think we need to be smarter. I think we need to be better. I think we need to be better engaged with people, better understood and better involved in communities. So that would be my response. I welcome the challenge, and I think I'll really welcome the opportunity to make sure that those views are really strongly put through the consultation, and the opportunity then to work with you and your group around thinking about champions in the community. What does that mean? What training is available? What about the mental health first aid training? How can we do that? How can we think about that? What's the chance of growing a proper conversation about mental health and mental well-being? These are important things. Romeo, I didn't know if is there anything you wanted to add? No, he's shaking his head. I think he's either tired by me talking or he's happy with what I've said. I haven't quite worked it out yet. We'll sort it out later. Are there any other... No, there don't have to be, because I think I understand that people don't necessarily want to ask questions.
Hold up. Yes. We've got some as well online.
We've got some on there. Great. Well, we'll try and get through as many as we can.
Apparently they said we should do online and then do in person. Okay, so there's a question that has come through. How do I know or gauge if I'm unwell or if I'm struggling with my mental health?
Well, that's a good question. I think you have to ask yourself questions. How's my daily life? How am I functioning on a daily basis? Am I productive? Am I doing the productive things I need to do? And I don't mean productive necessarily in a job, but I mean productive in your relationships, productive and feeling good and flourishing or prospering, as John says. So how does that feel for me, and how do I feel? Do I feel sad? Do I feel lacking in energy? Am I stressed? Am I constantly thinking about things am I worrying about specific things? Am I getting in conflict with my family over things that seem small and trivial? Those are the sorts of questions I think I'd ask. There's other symptoms, of course. which are more severe and more significant. But it's probably not helpful to necessarily go through those now. Yeah.
Okay. And just to reiterate, some of the information that they've gone through so far, it will be on our social media platforms, so you could access that as well, okay? So the next question is, how do I tell my black family who don't really believe in mental health issues that I feel I need mental health? I don't know, you know.
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
It is. Yeah, I think, and this ties.
No, I could give you lots and lots of my thoughts on this from working with the black community for 20, 30 years. But, you know, I think, you know, if Romeo wants to say a few things about that,
yes.
His lived experience on that one might be superior.
And I think it ties in with what Councillor Ashedi was, you know, talking about in terms of, you know, when we tie in our social, and cultural, and then linking it to, what's it called, the mental aspect of things. You could go up, you know, just sort of, let's see, right, okay. So it just makes the picture looks a lot.
I mean, for me, throughout my nursing career, what I've sort of found is that a lot of our African families don't have education in mental health. I mean, I can give you a lot of scenarios where a family member has been struggling with mental health problems, but they're more concerned as to what the community or the family are going to say. You know, am I going to embarrass my family? You know, it's more about stigma. And what, you know, we spoke about the Urgent Care Hub, a service that I helped to start. And what we've been sort of doing in the Urgent Care Hub really is looking at education, educating families in terms of mental illness. That, you know, if you went and broke your leg today, you're going to go and have a plaster put on. But we do have other problems where you can't physically see it, you can't have a plaster, but it does need to be looked at. I mean, I've had sort of a lot of cases over the years where family sort of not understanding mental health problems has caused that actual individual to actually relapse, to actually self-harm, to actually isolate. Because one of the biggest things in mental illness is support from family, friends. Because without support, it's a very, very difficult journey for someone to sort of go alone at it. So I think education will play a big part in terms of, and I think the crisis cafes will help with that, because it's going to be more of a community base where you sort of come and you talk to a mental health professional, be it from LPT or the other services, and they'll be able to sort of educate people in terms of mental illness.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that answer. But also, I think, what's it called? When I read this question, in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, the youth already knows that, what's it called, the parents or the family is not really educated around mental health, you know. And when we're talking about linking it to the consultation, are there ways where we're targeting, or we're going to be targeting that specific challenge, like Councillor Shedu, you know, rightly said earlier on? Are there ways that we can get, what's the word? Maybe champions, working actively to getting champions, you know, that can relate to the, what's it called, to the individual, because that would determine if they decide to actually seek help or not entirely.
And I think the champions, that's a very, very good idea, and I think it's not something that has been sort of brought up in the consultation so far, in the ones that I've attended and taken part in. And I think you know, sort of having champions within the community and looking at trainings would definitely be something that, you know, we can sort of look at and provide.
Community ambassadors. So having ambassadors within the community, it's the same sort of thing, but it's just different, a different way of looking at it. So there's a mixture of sort of
just to, sorry. This is a great opportunity to have photos taken. Just to come back on your point, Romeo, because we all know that it's one thing to turn up at a crisis cafe and have a conversation with a complete stranger where you feel emboldened to share everything. But you're going back home to the same situation, the same scenario that leaves you feeling anxious and vulnerable. So my suggestion would be, is there any way that along the lines of our suggestion, Pastor Mercy, around having community champions or community ambassadors, that we actually get yourselves as the LPTCCG to have road shows? Now, these road shows are going to be held in spaces and places such as this, where you would be talking to people who have not probably disclosed to anybody, but know that they are struggling. And so you can provide some anonymity in them actually going out to seek help, because they would have heard it. And most places of worship, people come as families. And those conversations start to trickle down and trigger other things, where more things that probably would have been overlooked are spoken about. And you have people who for instance, a few years ago, I had a conversation with my dad about mental health, and he just said, mental health? No. He says, black people never have mental health. And we laughed about it. Then I made him watch a documentary, and he said, this is serious. He said something. He said, it's so hard. He understands now why mental health is talked about, because we live a society, live a culture, we live family and friends that are familiar. And you come to the unknown, where suddenly what I could have gone and said, do you know I'm having such and such a day? We'll laugh about it, talk about it. I have to sit in my room and try to come up with a solution. And that is nerve-wracking in its own. And sometimes you speak to somebody who doesn't understand where you're coming from, and they minimize it, and that further causes stress. So utilizing spaces and opportunities such as this going forward. I know Pastor Mercy has said, edition 1, so there'll be probably edition 10 by the time she's through. So, I think it's just something that should be considered in terms of how that particular challenge is answered or remedied.
So we're going to swiftly move on to in-house question. So Dr. Ido, over to you.
Hello, please. I'm Dr. Ido. I'm a GP in the Midlands. My question is this, and I'll probably say this from a GP perspective. Did I come? Yeah, because of the signal. Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to say about this is this. What is the LPT doing in terms of, I think when you look at the youth, you look at the population that we're talking to, and even the older population. The key thing for the youth now is the social media. You probably find most youth on lots of social media. Do we have a voice there, an active voice? That's one, in terms of adverts using the Mind Gate. The second thing is, do we have someone to talk to that probably like 12 hours to start with, that they can chat to during the day on the popular platforms like TikTok? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Not WhatsApp or things like that. Things that can be anonymous, that the verification process is not tedious. You want to speak to somebody and then they say, tell me your NHS number, can I get your name and date of birth? That puts some people off. That's one. And that leads on to my second question, because there is an initiative that is being done by the RCGP about Safer Surgery Initiative. And basically this is for undocumented migrants, where I'm sure you'll be aware of that. A migrant does not really have to prove they don't have to show proof of residency to get health care, to access health care. I'm sure a lot of people are not aware of that, because in GP surgeries, they would ask, where's your ID card, where's your passport, utility bill, before they register you. But really, the law when they're in distress. So I'm not quite sure where you stand on that, because what I found out is that, and this is, my wife is part of your team, though she's temporarily out, but she's coming back in August. She works with for LPT. What I found is that the struggle is that most times when you see undocumented migrants, they're in crisis. They're afraid to access health because the next thing they feel is that once I can't show identity, you're going to ring the police. But the Safer Surgery initiative that is being done by the RCGP, you don't look at that. And some surgeries, there's some training that needs to be done, because what you find out is that apart from trying to get it out to everybody in the social media for the youth and things like that, is that if we can have services and even the HealthPT actively encouraging these people to access health, then you're going to have a reduction in number of bed spaces being taken up, the difficulties that you encounter along the line, which I'm sure you're aware of. But I'm not sure where you stand on that, so that it's not too tedious, because sometimes when you go, oh, I'm sure he's not got your ID card and I'll put him up by that. So where's your ID? Where's your utility bill? But really, what is the HealthPT doing about that to help? Now, the next thing I want to say from a GP perspective, just to buttress what you said about you're going back to the same situation where your parents are at home and they don't really understand it. I had a chat with Nihi. I'm sure you know Nihi. What I felt was that to address, you actually need your parents to speak to someone they trust. You need to get your parents to go and meet a friend that has an experience in mental health. Because if you look at most family, African family, and you can agree with that, there's always an healthcare professional. By the time 3 or 4 generations, there will always be a nurse, there will always be somebody. So if you know Uncle J or Uncle T knows about, he's a doctor, he's a nurse, has a experience, have an informal chat with them first. What about that? So that you can gauge their, you know, sometimes you can separate the man from Mushin, like Pastor would say, but you can't take, that's not what I mean by that. That means sometimes you might be a doctor, but you still have that mentality. That's what I'm trying to explain. So informally gauge what they think of mental health. And if you feel, well, I can open up to this person, then ask your parents to go and have a chat with them. Or, uncle, can you please speak to that? Not what I'm going through, just to enlighten them, like a icebreaker, and then you can now have that conversation with them. Thank you.
So thank you. Incredibly helpful questions and challenge. It seems to me that there's themes developing. And the themes are, how do people know about services? And are we really in the 21st century as services? The answer is no, we're not really in the right place. I mentioned in the presentation the first bit on the what are we going to do, what's the proposals, and it was around growing on the online piece, growing all of that the self-help resources. That's exactly right, growing that online. But the next challenge is, well, what, just on a website with an NHS at the top of it? It can't be that, can it? It has to be where people are going to access it. And we're going to have to work with communities across the whole system, particularly the younger age group, but not exclusively, about how we get better at that as a system. And I think the CCG and our own comms team are doing some fantastic work on that. In younger persons' mental health and LPT, there's a thing called Chat Health, which works very similarly to our GP colleague has just described. Actually, you can go online and get advice in the same way that you can chat to somebody online if you're booking an airline ticket and you're getting stuck. So that kind of thing, I just think we've not got very good at really in mental health, but we're getting better. So absolutely welcome that challenge. The other theme, I think, is to do with genuinely working with communities to make sure that we're beginning to have the conversation that begins to get us in the right place to think about mental health as being everybody's business. Okay? That's the theme. And that's going to be a real challenge for all of us. Not just for black families, black African families, but I get the specific issues that you've raised. I acknowledge, I understand them. I've had some respectful conversations over many years trying to understand that myself, but also different groups as well. Stigma group exists in a range of areas. So how we get inside that, how we understand that, how we build the community conversation and the conversations to make sure that people have got people in the community to talk to about these issues. Online advice to get support from. You begin to have a conversation. One of the reasons we've done this consultation, we probably didn't have to do this consultation. We probably could have made the improvements without a consultation, because we're not closing anything and we're not moving anything. We probably could have done it. One of the reasons as a system we wanted to do the consultation was so that we could come out and start this conversation. Okay? Not just start the conversation, but carry on the conversation. So how is this conversation going to go on for the next 2 or 3 years? Who's going to be involved in it? Who's going to be saying, well, this is an organisation that seemed to want to be able to have these conversations. Let's challenge that. Let's check that out. Let's push them. Let's make sure they're going to hold on to their mandate and be honest about that. That's the other theme I'm hearing. The specific issue around migrants. So one of the things that I think proud isn't the right word, because you shouldn't be proud of something that you should do anyway. But LPT has said really clearly, not just that it's against racism or, looking at the intersectionalities and all of that, because in a sense, as a public body, you take that as your legal duty and your moral duty. But we've actually said that we actively want to seek and become an anti-racist organisation. Now, from my perspective, that covers a lot of things, and in my view, that absolutely covers migrants' rights. Yeah? Absolutely covers migrants' rights. Now, I don't want to get into the intricacies of the legal aspects of that. You expressed it extremely clearly, but there is something about organisations and CCG being a little bit clearer themselves and being really honest and open about what that means. If there's any issues about people accessing healthcare who are migrants, then you need to let us know in this community. People will need to contact us. That's really important. My commitment is, my view, is that people's mental health is paramount, not their status. Okay? So I'm being really clear about that. So there's something around the themes that are developing there that I think are really, really important. I think we've got more work to do around the online stuff, and I think we've got more work to do around thinking about social media. You're talking to somebody who's not even on any social media. So I'm literally the worst person to talk to. Like, the last time I was on social media, it was MySpace. Now, there's people in this room who don't even know what MySpace is. They go, MySpace? What's MySpace? Trust me, MySpace was what happened years ago when the Commodore 64 was invented. So, but thankfully we've got much smarter people in the organisation than I am. So hopefully that answers your points. I'm grateful for them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask a few online questions and then we'll continue in-house. So are there any precautionary measures that I can take to stop myself from falling into depression? That's part one.
Wow, what a great question. What a great question. How do you stop yourself falling into depression? Well, being mindful, being aware of oneself. Being aware and listening to your own thoughts and your own body, and being aware of your place in the community, being aware of how you're conducting yourself, being aware of the things you need to do on a daily basis, the nourishment you need, the exercise you need, the spiritual nourishment you need, all of the things that people need to make sure that they stay healthy. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to your own body's rhythms and your own mental health rhythms, and think about that. And then check it out with people as well. Do I seem okay? Am I in good form? Do I seem okay? Yeah, okay. That's a perfectly reasonable conversation to have as well. And just watch out for the traps that drain your energy. Watch out for the traps that drain your physical, mental, and spiritual energy. Is all I'd say on that.
Thank you so much for that. And there's also a meditation. It's good that you mentioned about, meditation. There's a meditation app called Headspace that is quite a good one to use as well. So that was part one of that. Part two is, or do you suggest that I go and find help and support instead? I guess that's answered the question, isn't it? Yes, that's answered the question. Okay, so we've got Ms. Tayo here to ask a question. So over to you, ma'am.
Step forward. Hi, I'll introduce myself actually. Hi, my name is Tayo. I'm Deputy Director of Operations at Walsall Manor Hospital. I heard a lot of great stuff today, and to me it makes sense because I'm in the healthcare setting. I think starting point just in my humble opinion, might be just destigmatizing the issues around mental health. And it might start with the language. And I think Sister Sidu alluded to this by saying the minute you hear that word mental health, everybody goes, what's the problem? And I think maybe that's a starting point. Probably we change the language. For example, in the acute hospital now, we're moving towards using the words like well-being. You know, how are you doing? Talk to us. What help do you need? What support, etc. I'm going to piggyback off what Dr. Idowu said as well, which is how do we make this so accessible? Because in my opinion, again, I don't think it should be a one-off event. If I'm having issues or I'm feeling some type of way, I should be able to easily go on my phone, whether that's an app, without having to ring a number where I feel like I can confidentially speak to someone in a discreet way, where even my family is not involved yet. And whether that's probably an app that is available all around throughout the year, 365 days a year, is something that I think a lot of youths will probably engage in. And I'm going to be a little bit selfish, which is sort of like my last question or comment. For somebody who I was talking to, I can't remember if it's still Helen, that was on call last night. As an on-call manager, I think my worst nightmare is when I hear there's a mental health referral in ED, and that patient has been there for 12 hours, 14 hours, the assessment has not been done, there are no beds. I understand that there are challenges within the workforce, so you probably don't have that resources to be there 24/7, but whether we have more presence, more people that are trained, or you train the people within the healthcare, within the hospital themselves to understand some of those things, identify the signs so that we're not actually wasting so much time with patients that we know we can't admit in the first place. Don't get me wrong, I know it's not something we can fix overnight, but the truth is, and the challenges we face in acute hospitals, it's terrible sometimes. I had a CAMS patient, I think about 2 weeks ago. This guy just didn't break jaws like windows, literally tore the hospital apart. And the answer we got is we just don't have a bed for him. So we can keep him overnight, but the hospital is not necessarily the answer, and it's not the safest place for them either. We can keep them safe, but they're not getting the right help that they need. So I don't know whether before we, do all of those wonderful things you talked about, maybe it's just more presence on the acute side so that we can give help to people. That's probably my suggestion. Thank you.
So I can pick those up now. Thank you. First of all, we've done loads of these events in the last 8 weeks. This has been by far the most productive, helpful, suggestive, really genuinely engaged, and incredibly helpful event we've done. Genuinely mean that. With no disrespect to some of the counsellors that we've met, with no disrespect to some of the members, no disrespect whatsoever. I'm on camera, no disrespect. But this has been the best. And it's exactly that kind of comment that makes it worthwhile. So, yeah, it's interesting. So we talk about mental health and well-being all the time, and I think we do need to think about our language. But it's interesting, our own doctors have actually, I'd say accused, that's a very strong word, pointed out to me really strongly this week that I spend too much time talking about mental health and well-being. I should be talking about serious mental illness. So you can't win. I won't tell you who, I'll tell you later who it was, but you'll understand. So, but it's a really good point, but there is something about how we talk about these things, and language is important, as we know. Your point about the acute, I mentioned it briefly in the slide, but I passed over it really quickly. So the mental health hub that we've got, is it Leicestershire working? It's a separate system, okay. Okay, oh, whoa. Okay, right, yeah, okay, I understand. Right, I do understand. So in this system, all I can say is, and Romeo can say a little bit of the hub and the acute services, CAMS is a real challenge. CAMS beds are a real challenge without any shadow of a doubt. And we ain't going to fix that now, okay? But I acknowledge it completely. In terms of adults, Romeo's in charge. And it's, we've got a system in Leicestershire, which means that we're one of the only trusts in the country that don't put people out of area. So we do have beds. So we have beds. We have a very strong liaison service, and we have the hub that supports that. So we're kind of fortunate here, through hard work, that we've got, we think, a really, really strong team. CAMS is another challenge. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about the services, acute services, liaison services.
I mean, as part of the consultation is we've been looking at our liaison services. Something that we had a problem in Leicestershire before was how people access services. But now our liaison services have all come under one umbrella. In the past, you'd have the mental health liaison service, which looked at people that attended Leicester Royal Infirmary, and then you had the service that looked at people over the age of 65. So these were all different services that worked in the same hospital, same trust, but worked completely different. But now our liaison services sort of come as one service, which is sort of under one umbrella. And looking, CAMS beds are, a nationwide problem that we have. I mean, I've received calls from Leicester Royal Infirmary where we've had CAMS patient there for 5 days and we can't find a bed for them. And equally, them being in there is not the right place for them. But in terms of looking at adult services, as Gordon mentioned, we are fortunate enough to have the Urgent Care Hub where, we sort of started it up last year at the start of COVID. And over time, our hub has grown to that we actually don't have out-of-area beds. So in the sense that, we can have someone, an adult, who is in Leicester Royal Infirmary, and there are no beds in acute for them to be seen. What happens is the patient will be moved over to the hub, and our hub, our hub does offer sort of an overnight stay, if you look at it in that way. Or even if we have an out-of-area patient who's a Leicester patient but has been seen elsewhere, let's say in London, and they want this patient to be admitted informally, they'll come to the hub where we'll reassess them. And again, if need be, we can sort of give them somewhere to stay, be it overnight, they're given meals and everything whilst they stay in the hub. So we're quite fortunate enough that, although at the start of COVID, quite a lot of trust had hubs, ours has stayed, and ours continues to sort of function now, and it has helped quite a lot in terms of looking at our acute beds. And again, that's actually on the consultation, is in looking and keeping it going as it is at the moment, and further growing in terms of the hub. We're looking at expanding how the urgent care hub works currently, which is also part of the urgent care and access pathway. So this is a front line in terms of mental health. So we're looking to sort of expand, and through this consultation and ideas like what you've just brought would sort of help us to achieve that.
Hello? Okay, thank you so much for that. Thank you very, very much. I think one of the things that kept, going through my mind as I was here, standing and listening to everything we've been talking about is it's so lovely that, we can put these services in place. But also, I think it would be so important for us to have a clarity in the structure of the services so that, okay, if this is how I'm feeling, this is the service that is best suited for me, this is where I need to go. And I think, was it Helen that said, or Joe, during the when we were talking the other day, and she said, a lot of people will just automatically go to A&E. So it defeats a whole lot of purpose if we're creating all these lovely services and the structure, is not put out there. There isn't any clarity that, okay, for example, I know, okay, if there's, this, I need to call NHS 111. I think it would be really nice if we could have that structure put out there. And then also, one of the things that I was thinking about, Leicester being such a multicultural, city, I'm sure that's the reason why we're picking at all of these things. There's a question that has come through, and I think, it's really good because in each organization you have first aiders. It's like a statutory, requirement, to obviously mind the physical aspect. So I think we should take it one step forward. I don't know, if something more to the CCG, to take it that step forward to say, okay, every organization, be it a church, be it whatever you are, have a first responder that that from time to time, that that could work in partnership with the CCG, to say, okay, that number one, when people are trained, I think we've touched on training, so I'm just going to skip on that. But I think if we get more of that, out, if we start this in Leicester, I think it will be a brilliant, be the pace setters on this, get a lot of, and that's how we can engage with the community. Churches, mosques, temples, start off like that, and go from that. So leading on, the next question, there was a question that says, are there any opportunities to volunteer or get work experience in the mental health field for youths? Because the faster we get all of this, it's a lot. It's the prognosis, is a lot, reduced, and the workload, because sometimes we try to plug things in the wrong place. If we plug it at the start, it would be a lot better. I think I was sharing with Helen as well on Tuesday that, I meet a lot of youths. Thankfully that I'm a pharmacist and I have, medical, background. That, and thankfully also for my husband, for me, that he gives me advice. I'm like, okay, I need this, someone, is experiencing this. What advice as well could you add on to that? But not everyone is as fortunate. So are there any opportunities?
So there are, and there should be more. So it depends on age, it depends on experience, but absolutely. And one of the things that we'll take strongly from today is the conversations with our voluntary sectoral colleagues and our charitable colleagues around what does it look like to genuinely grow a real volunteer engagement piece across this system. People that can work in different services, get some support, get some advice about what it means to be involved as a volunteer, but also how we can, I think, grow the champion piece. I mean, wouldn't it be great if mental health first aid was just as common as St. John's? Yeah? I mean, wouldn't that be great? That's how it should be. That's what it should be like. We should get to a position where it becomes no stranger to talk about that than it would be to go to St. John's Ambulance if you're at a park, if you're at a place of work, to be able to go if you've had a bee sting or had an accident. You should be able to do that. So that's something we'll take on. The specific issues on volunteering, we will have to come back. We will find some resources. We will have that conversation more formally through the consultation with you. Please make sure that we've captured that and we take it through. Colleagues are nodding.
Yeah, thank you. Because we do appreciate that funding is an issue. But if a lot of people are willing, even within our organization, within the ministry here, I know there will be people that will jump at that, to come forward to actually, say, we'll take on this training and be part of the solution. Because sometimes, we can lay a lot of problems, we also need solution, and we all can chip in to be part of that solution as well. So that's good.
Yeah, we have been really surprised through the consultation in terms of how many offers we've had of that nature, whether it's from patient groups, our patient participation groups, whether it's disease-specific groups. So that's really come across loud and clear in the consultation. So yeah, it's a great opportunity.
Okay.
Okay, so I think this would be the last question, unless I have, anyone in the auditorium. It says, I think I have a mental health illness, but it is mild and I'm functioning. Is it worth still getting a diagnosis? And how would I go about it? I think we've asked that. Yeah, I think we've answered that, really. I think that's been answered.
Can you ask the question again?
So it says, if I think I have a mental health illness, but it is mild and I'm functioning, is it worth still getting a diagnosis, and how would I go about it?
In terms of getting a diagnosis, be it mild or not, one of the first things mental health or mental illness having an understanding of what is going on around you. So if you know what is going on around you, it sort of helps you to help yourself, because what is mild today can create a crisis tomorrow. But if you're in a place whereby you know exactly what it is that you either have or what's going through or what support is available, then you can. Because what we don't like is waiting where there's a crisis and then you start coming for help. It's sometimes better to sort of look at things before they get into a crisis. So I would actually urge and say, yes, getting that help. As for, in terms of Leicester and Leicestershire, how that help for us would be through our central access points, which is also part of the consultation, is where people ring for support and advice in terms of where they can get the help.
Sashidi and I were just talking about, and that's literally something in my field that you come across, and this cuts across, different cultures and different, background, where some people feel like there's a lot of stigma around medication, not just even the illness itself. I'll get patients that'll come to me and say, you're talking them through, this medication, what's it called? Do I really need it? Or what's it called? Or even people start and they stop. And we know with most, medications, you should, especially around that, you should not, just stop without, going back to your prescriber. So do you want to talk around that, in terms of the stigma that a lot of people face because they're scared of coming onto medication and the options, because there are other options as well, even before medication?
I can actually respond to that. I recently had someone that I saw in clinic, a young lady that was having quite a lot of difficulty in terms of mental health and well-being. And she was clearly going through quite a lot. And it actually needed her to be on medication. So I prescribed her and started on some medication. However, she felt the medication drugged her up or made her look like she was a junkie or a druggie, which with some of the medication in mental health or in mental illness, it does cause a lot of drowsiness. The medication does come with some side effects, weight gain being one of the biggest ones. And she was right to say, sort of the medication that had been suggested, there was that potential that, she could come across as sort of drugged up or junkie. And this is the one thing that she didn't want. And you'll find it with some of the medications that we prescribe. So if I say to someone, I'm going to prescribe you, for example, quetiapine 300 milligrams. Now, just thinking of you taking 300 milligrams worth of medication, that's quite a lot of medication. But if you were to look at it, sort of, like you were saying, a lot of people won't know, but if you were to look at it, if I was to look at it, technically that wouldn't be quite a lot, but it's just that figure of 300. And this person, this is what they were looking at. It was more of the figure that we're looking at prescribing. But nowadays, with a lot of changes in mental health in terms of there's more medication that's got less side effects, that can be prescribed, an equivalent dose of 300 milligrams can be prescribed at 7.5 milligrams. But it's just a different drug now that we're sort of issuing. In the past, they were very limited. I'm sure Gordon can sort of, they were limited in terms of what you had, because in the past, people were literally drugged up in terms of, they hardly ever functioned in terms of doing anything because they were so over-medicated. But now with sort of more modern medication, we have less side effects, and there are a lot of various options that we can talk to someone and say, okay, fine, yes, we understand these medications do have these side effects, but there are new ones that less side effects and more friendly to the body.
Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone in here and online, you would agree with me that this has been very, very interesting. Oh, Sarah, I was going to say one more question and then that's it, because I have one more question there. Okay, I would honor that question. Is that okay for us to honor her question? Yeah? Okay. So we'll honor that question, and, usually we do give. So if you want to give, please go online and just follow the instructions there. And I will go to Sarah for her to ask her question quickly.
Just really quickly, I just wanted to go back with the leaflets that were mentioned earlier and with the social media outreach. I think it's very important to have people with the whole topic of diversity, because I was doing some research in this past few weeks about my my course, and they were talking about how people tend to, when they see leaflets or social media pages that are predominantly white people, predominantly like any other group of people, they tend to think that the information that's there isn't for them. So I think when we're talking about the type of social media outreach and the leaflets that was mentioned, it's important to have a diverse group of pictures or different images that show that it's aimed at everybody.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very apt... okay, finally, I will go to Angel, so our media guru. She doesn't like me calling her that.
I have 3 questions. I'm going to speak quite fast. Just the first one, they're short questions, but I don't know if you said this earlier or maybe I just didn't hear, but how long before the changes that are being proposed are actively reflected and felt in the community?
Okay, so some of the changes have already been made, like the hub and like the CAP and like the liaison services. We're asking people to support that continues, yeah? Some of the other changes, some of the challenges we face today around champions and engaging communities, I think it's going to take longer. But the substantial changes we've outlined in terms of the new team structures, we're expecting those to start taking place from after the consultation's closure. There'll be a period of a couple of months, and then from October onwards, those changes will start to be made. It may well take 6 months or something for those to embed in. The real changes we discussed here, I think, may take longer, but that's because it's a cultural challenge about,
My next question is, I know work is being done in schools. I'm not entirely sure it's being felt, though. Are there plans to upscale this or to change the way that work is being done or the way we're interacting in schools to make sure more people are feeling?
So this consultation is around adults. It doesn't cover children, doesn't cover parents, but you're absolutely right. Maybe addition 2 might be about the new skills teams that are developing. Genuinely, there's a fantastic new system being built where they're building new teams of mental health professionals. I think they're in wave 5 now, and they're embedded in schools and developing skills. So I think it's a deficit. By the way, they used to exist, Angel. Years ago, there were really strong teams in schools. They've all been stripped out over the years. And I won't get political about it because it won't be helpful. I could get political about it, but it won't be helpful. But yeah, that's happening. So maybe that's a further conversation that people in this room can have.
And my final question is, I think it was touched on earlier about self-awareness when it comes to mental health. I don't know actually if this is a question, but I'll say it anyway. Self-awareness when it comes to mental health. And I think it's very important that context is talked about a lot, because I was looking at the signs and symptoms of depression, that was showed on the slides earlier. And they're quite varied in range. And I think it can be easy for somebody who maybe is feeling low on a particular day because of a particular event to perhaps, maybe it's just feeling sad, to now think that maybe they are depressed.
What an intelligent question.
If that makes sense. So I just wanted to know, how can we combat that? Because I think already, because we can Google symptoms so easily, there already is more health anxiety. So how can we combat that, but without diluting the importance of mental health or invalidating people's feelings?
Outstanding question. By reading, by understanding, by researching, by talking, by thinking. There is a difference between normal feelings of feeling sad. People should feel sad. It's a real thing. It's a real thing that we feel. sometimes it's entirely reasonable to feel stressed. You mentioned migrants earlier on. I've worked with people who are migrants and have status and looking for different status. Incredibly stressful, legitimately stressful. So you're absolutely right. So I think there is something about not rushing into believing that it's just because you kind of tick some of those boxes that something's wrong with you. But I think it's just being aware that potentially sadness, even if it's legitimate, may turn into something else if it's not managed. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's the last of the questions. Okay. It feels like you've been under the spotlight, literally.
It's very, very late. Well, no, listen, it's been a pleasure. It's been great. I mean, as I said earlier, we mean it when we say that one of the issues, and Romeo and I have talked about this, and colleagues, Sue and Helen and I have talked about this in the past, the start of the conversation that the consultation gives us is, in a sense, much more important than the consultation. Yeah? Because we've decided we're going to improve some services. Well, great. That's fantastic, isn't it? We've got some new money. We're going to make things better. We're going to make it easier for people to access, etc., etc. But the conversation is the important thing. And having conversations like this is crucial. Just want to say thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
And we're very, very grateful for your time today. This has been, I'll repeat it, incredibly valuable to us and one of the most important things we've done through this consultation. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
What's that say? All right. Okay. Yeah. So can I be really clear? This is by far the best consultation event we've had so far. And it's the first face-to-face. So edition 1, premiere 1, number 1. There you go.
Thank you so much. Please give a round of applause to the team. Thank you. I can't overemphasize. So apparently I've just been made aware that there is a diversity form to be filled in. So we're going to put that on our social media as well. So please, if you could kindly, fill that in, as well as we have the consultation question and the survey as well. We'll have that on our social media. It will be on YouTube, all our handles basically. So please fill it in. Send to your friends, your neighbor, your loved ones. If you see someone on the street, just pass it on to them. Yeah. Okay. So. Okay.
Put that into the consultation document as well. I've got quite a loud voice.
Online.
So, whatever you think, just pop it into and that will be fed through to LPT.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I think we'll probably say thank you, and we'll probably go downstairs now.
Yes,
okay.
we're rounding up now.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Romeo, for your time, and also thank you, Councillor Ashedu, for bringing this on. So thank you so much. God bless you. We cannot overemphasize. So please, a round of applause to the team. God bless you so much. I'm going to call on Pastor T to just round up. Thank you, Pastor. Please, Pastor, come on.
All right. I think I'm younger than Mercy, but, age is but a number, isn't it? Yeah. So I'd just like to say thank you for coming. It's been enlightening. It's been eye-opening. For my generation, unfortunately, we had a particular concept of mental health. So anytime anybody comes to you and they say they have mental health issues, you run away from them, because that was what we were taught, that anybody with mental health is, it must be that they must have offended somebody or something, and, or a deity, and that's why, that's the result of, their way of life. And also one of the things that we were taught as well is, it's because you've been living very bad. That's why you have that. So most people just look at people that, it's because you've been living your life recklessly. That's why you have mental health issues. But we know now that that's not the truth. And, that's why it's very important that the younger generation needs to understand more about mental health. And also one of the things that, was said that I think we need to do a 2.0 of this, that we need you to come to the main church. This is the annex of the church, to talk to the parents. Because, if a young person say to their parents that I'm feeling this way, most of the African parents that I know will either call me to say, you need to pray for him. Or you need to talk to him because I'm going to chase him out of my house. And, because of that threat, most young people don't talk to their parents. And I think we need to educate, the parents, to be able to spot signs of mental health, because when you see your vibrant son or daughter not, as vibrant as they used to be, I think we need to, start the conversation with them, let them be comfortable to talk to you. So I think that's one of the things that we need to do. So I'd just like to say thank you to you for coming. We if you don't mind, we're going to put this on our social media platforms to replay it so that at least the parents can hear and see as well. So if you don't mind, we need a permission to do that. But thank you very much. And everybody, if you have any issues regarding mental well-being, is that what Tayo called it? All right, mental well-being. Please speak to somebody. I think one of the major issues we have in our community is that a lot of people like to suffer in silence. There'll be somebody sitting next to you that, you don't need to pray. That is the solution to your problem. But most people just keep quiet. Even if they're asking you, are you okay? We have the ready-made answer. Oh, yes, I'm good. But please, let's talk to somebody if you're not feeling well. And if anybody is talking to you, please, if you don't have the right answers or the necessary answers, why don't you just please refer them to somebody that could be of help? So thank you very much. I hope to see you shortly. Thank you. God bless you.